Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So yeah, they continue to put out new stuff here. So we knew EW had the reveal today, and we have that. It's a pretty big interview that we will go through. But they did also post the next video. We got the character video for Aang, we have Katara today, and I'm assuming we'll get more of them as the days go on. So might have to make it so that I'm not doing news videos every day, so I might have to group up some of them as we go forward. But of course, with the EW article, we have to cover things today. So one thing they did post is they posted this article. I think they've had up for a while, but they kind of like updated it with new visuals and stuff like that. It's basically the cast list that they'd put out publicly. It is not everything that I think we know fully, but it is most of the characters they've announced, but obviously quite a few that we haven't really seen yet. The most notable one is definitely that, of course, I even forgot this myself until I looked at this, that they do have someone for Wan Shi Tong. So we're going to see, or at least hear, Wan Shi Tong in Season 1. So this is obviously in relation to Zhao. Part of his arc is that when he was younger, he of course went to the Wan Shi Tong's library, and this is how he found out information about how to locate the forms, the physical forms of the ocean and moon spirit. And I'm guessing they're going to add on to that here and highlight that also he will find out how to kill spirits as well. Now, this obviously highlights that I'm guessing they're going to do something a little bit more than what we were shown, because in the animation, they wait to do the "this is Wan Shi Tong" reveal until Season 2, whereas here it does feel like, I guess we're going to get to see Wan Shi Tong potentially interact with Zhao, or at least in the background he's going to be there somewhere. The full extent of this will be interesting to see if, like, is this maybe revealing what he looks like too early? Might they have wanted to maybe save Wan Shi Tong until Season 2 because it's such a notable episode? Otherwise, they just highlight that, you know, Ko, of course, is going to be here. The Great Sage, one of the Fire Sages, of course. They highlight Roku, no pictures. Sozin is mentioned here. Lieutenant Dong is going to be Zhao's second in command. They have Mei, they have Ty Lee, of course. Lieutenant G, Cabbage Merchant, obviously. Teo, mainly just highlighting that, yeah, they have a Kyoshi, they have a Roku, they have a Karuk. They're the kind of big ones, of course, that we really want to see at some point. But also they highlight the Northern Water Tribe main characters. Chief Arnook, they have Han here, Yagoda, Paku, Princess Yue. A lot of which we haven't seen exactly just yet, but it's cool that they did kind of re-put the casting list out there. But here is the EW article. So it's a full-on major kind of interview with the 4 main cast members, plus they have comments from some of the other actors as well. It's a pretty long interview. Along with this, there is a video. It's not a video version. They have a 13-minute interview with the 4 main cast members as well, which there's only really one thing I want to mention from that, but we'll get to that. So I have some highlights here just because, again, in terms of news, I don't think every single thing that the actors have to say is necessarily news. So in terms of trying to figure out like what changes have they made, that's mainly what I've highlighted here. But it's linked below. Read the full thing if you wish. The link's down below. So first thing I just want to highlight here is that Albert Kim does clarify that there are changes that maybe make the show come across as if they're trying to make this a darker version is not really the intent. He's saying that this is not trying to basically make Avatar a dark retelling. Instead, he's kind of more just trying to make Book 1, in his mind, more along the lines of Book 2 and 3, having that little bit extra kind of nuanced, kind of slightly darker kind of edges that we saw, which I think is a reasonably good way to kind of put what he's trying to do here. Get less of the really one-off episodes and kind of create more of a kind of contained story kind of style thing. He says the mission with the adaptation is to fill in gaps from the original while remixing the material to fit the dramatic series format. Moments that may have occurred off screen or characters that never met in the original show are now fair game, though the spirit of the animation series remains. Again, I'll just note, I don't know how I necessarily feel about how sort of the first point on his mission for the adaptation is filling gaps from the original rather than make a good adaptation. Maybe that's just implied, but I just feel it's a little bit of a weird point that, like, he specifically, one of the aims was to basically do stuff that the original kind of didn't, rather than do the stuff that the original did well. But maybe it's reading too much into it, but we'll move on. Yeah, this is an interesting point that is mentioned here. There's more weight with realism in every way. Some things that worked in the more zany animated kids show hit differently in live action. I feel we also took out the elements of how sexist Sokka was. I feel like there were a lot of moments in the original show that were iffy. I find that to be a little bit of a weird statement. Now, the reveal from that is, of course, that it seems like they are taking out of the live action that small, early Sokka is sexist arc that basically we see for the first, like, 3 episodes and basically gets pretty much fully dealt with in episode 4 through his interactions with Suki. And I always felt that this was a nice little kind of thing to have at the start, just to highlight kind of one of the early points on the adventure for Sokka that was a major kind of character growth moment for him that he immediately moves past. I never felt like it was this thing that, like, shock, horror, like the character is a full-on sexist, like we need to really criticize him for this. I think it was one of those things where, like, given his situation, in a way given Sokka and Katara's situation, I think you understood a little bit of, like, kind of, oh, I can kind of see how this kind of came about. And then the fact that it's relatively quickly through interacting with Suki that he changes always helped to kind of make it, like, not as big of a thing as some people might make it out to be. But interesting, they're not doing that. I'm guessing they just felt that they didn't want to touch this if they weren't maybe going to have the ability to do it in the best way possible. As for her comment about there were a lot of moments in the original show that were iffy, I feel like that's a bit of a, like, broad statement to make, and I'm kind of like, I'm not really sure I've heard anyone say that about Avatar before, that there are lots of iffy moments in it. I'm not really sure what she's alluding to here necessarily. But yeah, this arc being removed, I guess it will help maybe the very start of that episode flow a little bit smoother, just getting into the fact that, hey, we're not enemies of Kyoshi Island, and they're allies from a kind of from an earlier point in the episode. They talk about how, you know, Reddit threads were talking about this and stuff like this. It's maybe making a mountain out of a molehill type situation here. Like, things were redirected because it might play a little bit differently in live action. If they don't want to do it, like, fair enough. We'll see how it pans out, but that's that. This is a bit of a weird one in that I'm not entirely sure what they mean by this because they're not going into details. Playing it differently is the absence of Katara and Sokka's parents. In the animated series, their mom died when the Fire Nation invaded, and their dad is off fighting in the war. While the cartoon addresses this narrative, the live-action series makes it more of a lingering trauma that affects both siblings. For Sokka, he's dealing with what it means to not have his father, and to try and maybe lead when you're not fully capable. And it's just mentioned here, I do feel like it's a recurring theme. It's such a big part of their lives. And I'm a bit like, so it's just this version's way of doing it is that they're doing it roughly a similar way to the way the animation does it. I guess it's meant to highlight that it's maybe more present in more episodes is probably the main takeaway here. But it's not that the original never really touched it. They even mentioned that it didn't. So, I don't know, the wording here just, I think, could have been a little bit clearer about the exact point that's trying to be made here. Because it kind of just comes across as like, oh, like, Katara's going to mention her mother. Sokka's going to mention, like, not having his father around, kind of like they do in Bottle of the Water Tribe, you know, these kind of rites of passage that, like, you're meant to have kind of with your father in the Water Tribe, that sort of thing. So it's there, and again, without the specifics on what the live action is doing, it just comes across a little bit weird because they have to vaguely speak around details for, like, spoiler reasons, basically. Daniel Day Kim does say that Ozai does not have a lot of screen time. but you do feel his presence whenever you see Zuko or Azula. So this is probably to be expected. Like, he plays a bigger role in season 1 than he does in the animation, but he's still not going to have like that many scenes. With regards to Azula, the mention here from the actress is it lets Azula and Ozai have their own start to the story before all that stuff we know them to do later on. We get to see her origin story, which is really cool. So I'm guessing this is literally just, this is what Azula gets up to in the points that we don't see her in during season 1. We'll see what the specifics on this are, in terms of like, did you need to do as much as you're potentially going to do with these two characters, or how exactly it works, but we'll see how it works. We move on here. This is an interesting one here, just in terms of like the wording again. They of course mention Mike and Brian leaving the Netflix adaptation, and then the specifics of why exactly this all kind of fell apart on their side, the specifics of that story have yet to be told. And then they just go into basically the whole idea of, again, we saw this interview quite a while ago where they talked about this section of it, of like how Albert Kim dealt with them leaving the show. They're still credited for the premiere episode, and Brian for episode 6, which we I think knew about from before, but that's just that whole thing. There are a few new screenshots as well during this article. So here's Katara and Jet. Here is Sokka and Suki. And as we go through here, there is a few other things I just want to mention here. A second season has not yet been announced by Netflix, but I'm guessing we will find out very quickly that there is a season 2, because I think it's going to do very well. And in the same way that they, I think, moved very quickly to announce One Piece as having more, they'll do the same here. I think it will immediately get confirmed for season 2 and 3, so they can do the rest of the story, and they can figure out how they want to do the timing of like how long the comet takes, and they could just figure out the timeline stuff that is required with, basically, as they point out here, the characters who are very quickly growing up. In terms of the VFX, this is a bit of an interesting detail. Though a single shot involving waterbending in episode 3 proved to be one of the toughest to pull off visually. While Raisani can't get into specifics, he does tease that it's just doing something that water really doesn't do. We all understand how water moves in our world. We're purposefully defying all the rules, but trying to make it look like it's obeying the rules. It's a really hard thing to get right. So I'm wondering if this is kind of just that idea of like, you know, benders can levitate large amounts of water, waterbenders can, and they're just kind of highlighting that like there's still a kind of gravity effect on the water, but it's clearly being sort of like magically levitated by the power of bending, and just how they visually showcase that, because everyone knows how water kind of flows, but you have to kind of think about how all those elements kind of play together. I wonder what specific shot they're necessarily talking about, though, from episode 3 as well. So is this maybe something to do with like Jet and that whole kind of sequence, if they do that, you know, Katara and Aang moving the water in that sequence? Not really sure. And that's pretty much the end of that sequence. And then let me just have a quick look for some of those other screenshots. Yeah, here's Ozai and Azula. Azula getting a letter here. So again, it'll be interesting to see what this is all about. But I think that's pretty much everything there. Yes. Then their 13-minute interview. The main thing in terms of a story detail that I got out of this is that at one point, Dallas, who plays Zuko, mentions that he and Katara have a fight on Kyoshi Island. So this seems to confirm that Zuko is in fact involved in the Kyoshi episode, when everything else had pointed to, oh, have they replaced Zuko with Zhao? Because Zhao is the one who's mainly attacking Kyoshi Island. But now it seems to confirm Zuko's involved in there as well. So that's probably the main thing. Again, I think the interview is pretty fun. If you like the cast and crew style stuff, I definitely recommend checking it out here, either on Twitter, or I think it's also up on YouTube as well. But yeah, we'll get into this. So this is the Katara character video. Very much the same format as the Aang character video that we got yesterday. 13 seconds long, made up of about 5-6 different shots. We get a few lines of dialogue, and there's like 2-3 new scenes. So let's take a look through some of this here. So I have some screenshots here. So the first one, as you can see here, we get the narration, "You are a waterbender," as Katara does some kind of push and pull waterbending. I suppose doing some early practice. This might be in or around waterbending scroll kind of situation. That seems to be what's happening here, because we do see her then looking at a waterbending scroll. Where exactly they get this from will be interesting to see. Because my takeaway from this is that, do I think they're doing the entirety of the waterbending scroll episode? No. I think they are taking the core start of that episode of just, hey, let's take a little bit of a break for Aang and Katara to do a bit of waterbending here. That makes, I think, a lot of sense to help Katara's story in terms of learning waterbending. And I guess at some point, maybe at the Southern Air Temple, maybe it's something they're given right as they leave, is a waterbending scroll. They find it somewhere. They'll come across the waterbending scroll as a way to give them a little bit of an edge before we get to the Northern Water Tribe in terms of learning waterbending. That's the whole idea here. Katara wishes she'd be able to do more for their people, of course. And then I don't have it in one of the screenshots here, but she does say, "I'm a warrior," which I think is very interestingly worded, because that isn't that part of Sokka's arc, that he wants to be the warrior. And I get it, both can be true, but I think in terms of, I suppose, if you're familiar with the show, I think this is probably more going down the angle of, I want to learn combat waterbending. That's, I think, what they're kind of pointing out here. She wants to fight. She wants to learn her bending so she can fight and help in the war as much as anyone else. I think that's probably the angle they're going for here with the warrior comment. I still probably myself would have preferred them to stay away from that word, just because I do associate it more with Sokka, though I do get the idea in general that they're making here. We then see Katara walking through the Southern Water Tribe, and we see some of the kids here. Looks pretty good. A shot from kind of behind here, showing a broader look. Again, looking pretty nice. Then we get, we saw this before. This was from the website. If you get waterbending in the element quiz, you get this quick shot of Katara doing the kind of waterbending kind of little blast here. But now we see that she's actually firing this at Zuko. And based on what I just mentioned there from the interview, is this Kyoshi Island? They're having this fight maybe in the forest there, while Zhao is maybe attacking the town and Sokka's helping Suki fend everyone off. It makes me wonder what the exact sequence of events is going to be on Kyoshi Island, in terms of like, how interactive is the gang with Zhao, and then does Zhao know Zuko's here? Like, how do we exactly play a lot of this? Or is this from later on? Is this maybe from the Jet episode, potentially? Though, if they're going to do the book 2 stuff with Zuko and Jet, I don't think those two can necessarily meet just yet. But they're going to make changes. Maybe that's one of the ones they do. Who knows? And then we end with Katara saying that it's her job, it's their job, basically, to protect the Avatar. That's the way they see themselves within the group. So, pretty nice for a just over 10-second trailer. I think these do a pretty perfect job at just getting the core idea across, while also serving the role of, hey, here's a couple of extra clips that you haven't seen yet. So I'm guessing we're going to get one of these probably for Sokka maybe tomorrow. Maybe they might break that up and do Zuko next and then end with Sokka. Will they do one for other characters? Will Azula get one? Zhao? Iroh? We'll have to wait and see. But they obviously have a major marketing plan in place, because it seems like since they dropped the trailer, there's almost something new every day. I don't know if they'll be able to fully keep this up. There's going to be a little bit of downtime, I'm guessing. Maybe next week it won't be as heavy, and then they'll ramp up again with like 2 weeks to go or something like that. That's probably the way they might play it. I doubt they'll go maybe like a full week without saying anything, but might not be as maybe heavy as what seems to be the plan for this week. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything about the EW stuff overall. And then we'll get into the one non-Netflix Avatar piece of news that we have here. And that is just a little bit of extra detail in the Heart of a Hero description. So let me get this into view here. So this is in relation to the video I did yesterday where we got to the idea there's going to be a Korra style book in the same vein as Heart of a Hero, a picture book, but Heart of a Hero is coming out very soon. But it seems like there's some interesting things just in the description here. So obviously if you've seen this before, it mentions stuff that kind of mostly includes like rumors about like, oh, 4 new TV series, 3 movies. Not sure how super accurate that is these days, but one thing's quite interesting here. In the kind of marketing section, consumer products and retail developments. One, there's a robust offering of merchandise across categories and retailers. Avatar items are consistently in the top 10 at Box Lunch and Hot Topic. Okay. In October 2023, there will be a marketing campaign around World Animal Day. Okay. And then the stuff relating to this year. In Q1 of 2024, when Netflix releases its live-action Avatar series, retailers will leverage their core and classic products, which fit right into the plotline of the Netflix series. So I very much take that to be, we're not putting out new stuff, or at least a lot of new stuff, to coincide with Netflix Avatar, but we expect retailers will really emphasize the Avatar stuff that they do have in stock. So Box Lunch, Hot Topic, who have a lot of that standard Avatar merch, will emphasize it a lot more to coincide with Netflix. That's going to be one kind of initial step of their marketing. But then here's the interesting one. In Q2 and Q3 of 2024, an In Your Element campaign will leverage in-world activations and social assets that will help to engage core Avatar fans. What does this mean? There's a lot of marketing jargon in there in terms of like the word activations being used there, as I'm guessing this idea of like, hey, if someone engages with this, we have activated them as a fan. It's a bit of a weird terminology. But yeah, apparently in the coming months after Netflix Avatar, there's going to be a campaign, marketing campaign called In Your Element that will have in-world activation stuff, social assets, I guess stuff that they put up on social media. And this will help to interest Avatar fans ahead of, I'm assuming, Q3, Q4 2024 will be when Avatar Studios does properly start to talk about what they are actually doing. This also lines up with the stuff we know with regards to Paramount's plan for Avatar merchandise and toys, is that they do want to emphasize the kind of return of Avatar ahead of 2025. So we're expecting probably late in the year, we will hear about like a kind of a full-scale like Avatar toy line of sorts, I'm guessing, at some point towards the end of the year. Not super kind of niche, but like a proper one that will be in stores everywhere, which hasn't really been the case. And this leading into that, and hopefully a Netflix Avatar, sorry, not Netflix Avatar, and Avatar Studios news about the movies, about the series, that should be a good marketing approach for the kind of main aspect of the franchise, like what they're doing with these animated things. Just an interesting one because we get so little detail on what the plan is, what the communication strategy is from Avatar Studios. Now at least it seems like we have an idea that in the months following Netflix Avatar, there'll be something to build up hype for the Avatar that we really, really want, and that is the new content from Avatar Studios. So there is that. And then just one quick update here is that also, I think from the video, they did show off this particular screenshot here. So it is Aang reading a book here. I'm not entirely sure where he is. Like, is this somewhere in the air temples kind of wrecked? Is this inside somewhere in the water tribes? I'm not really sure what to make of this. Is it like in relation to maybe Katara finds the waterbending scroll at in or around this time? Not entirely sure. Might this be how Aang goes into flashbacks? Is this like Yatsu's journal or something? And there's a few options that they have here, not too much to speculate on with this one, but yeah, that's basically been the news. So let me know what your thoughts are on the big interview and some of the stuff that was said during it. If you watch this video interview here as well, the Katara video, of course, as well. What were your thoughts on that, and when they're going to do the other ones as well? And then, yeah, some interesting marketing material that is kind of the stuff we don't really hear about too much. But let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comments below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.